pounded on the windows, the sky rained fire, and the air came alive in roaring flame. Choices that day were stark and few. There was now, and there was never. A week later, the fire's toll conjured images of a nuclear blast. There was not just damage, there was total obliteration. Trying to articulate what she saw during a tour of the fire's aftermath, one official said, "You go to a place where there was a house, and what do you see on the ground? Nails. Piles and piles of nails." More than 2,500 homes and other structures were destroyed, and thousands more were damaged. 2,300 square miles of forest were burned. By the time the first photos were released, the fire had already belched 100 million tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, much of it from burning cars and houses. The Fort McMurray fire, destined to become the most expensive natural disaster in Canadian history, continued to burn not for days, but for months. It would not be declared fully extinguished until August of the following year. Wildfires live and die by the weather, but the weather doesn't mean the same thing it did in 1990 or even a decade ago, and the reason the Fort McMurray fire trended on news feeds around the world in May 2016 was not only because of its terrifying size and ferocity, but also because it was a direct hit, like Hurricane Katrina on New Orleans, on the epicenter of Canada's multi-billion-dollar petroleum industry. That industry and this fire represent supercharged expressions of two trends that have been marching in lockstep for the past century and a half. Together, they embody the spiraling synergy between the headlong rush to exploit hydrocarbons at all costs and the corresponding increase in heat-trapping greenhouse gases that is altering our atmosphere in real time. In the spring of 2016, halfway through the hottest year of the hottest decade in recorded history, a new kind of fire introduced itself to the world. "No one's ever seen anything like this," Fort McMurray's exhausted and grieving fire chief said on national TV. "The way this thing happened, the way it traveled, the way it behaved, this is rewriting the book." 1. If a tree burns in a forest and nobody sees it. In Canada, this is more than a philosophical question. Canada contains 10% of the world's forests, vast tracts of which are uninhabited. But vast is an ineffective descriptor when it comes to Canada, its forests, or its fires. One way to grasp the magnitude of this country is to get in a car in Great Falls, Montana, and head up I-15 to Sweetgrass on the Canadian border. Once you've crossed into Coutts, Alberta, reset your odometer and point your car north. Then settle into your seat for a couple of days. With the Rocky Mountains on your immediate left, this route takes you up the western edge of the prairies, through Lethbridge, Calgary, and Red Deer, wheat and cattle country. Once past the northern metropolis of Edmonton, you will find yourself increasingly alone on the road, surrounded by broad expanses of hard-scrabble subarctic prairie, fields frozen solid or half-drowned and barely fit for cattle feed. On the main road, now no wider than a residential street, hamlets with one blinking light and a gas station slide by, and not another for 50 miles. To the east and west, gravel range roads run out to the vanishing point, and man-made structures appear more and more as intermittent novelties. Here, a schoolhouse-sized Ukrainian church with its tin-sheathed onion dome stands alone against a wind-swept loneliness so profound it suggests the Russian steppe. There, a barn collapses asymmetrically beneath the weight of 100 heavy years, fully half of them spent clenched in the fist of winter, the people long gone. Farther on, a 10-acre lake so startlingly blue that mere reflection even of Alberta's sky seems insufficient to explain it. Somewhere along the way, you will cross an unmarked divide where deer give way to moose, crows give way to ravens, and coyotes give way to wolves. By the time you get to North Star, the wide-open spaces for which Alberta is famous will be filled in by low, mixed forest and bogland that bears a strong resemblance to Siberia. By the time you stop for coffee in a lonely place called Indian Cabins, it will be tomorrow and your odometer will be approaching 1,000 miles, but you will still be in Alberta.